Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a 1970s Daiwa reel. It was a trade reel. It says Wilcox Daiwa. And we did one of these for Scott earlier. It was a smaller version, but it was a Wilcox Daiwa. And I think what we found out is that Wilcox was a retailer. I don't remember if it was a sporting goods store or not, but it was a retailer out on the West Coast. And Daiwa would make reels like this that not only carried their brand, but was also showing the retailer's brand. So for example, you can find a Sears reel that is identical to this one. It reads Sears. I believe it was the 100 Sears, but I'm gonna pass and say that if it wasn't, that's me not remembering very well. And a lot of times you'll find a reel like this that may just say Sears, and if you look underneath, it'll say it's a product of the Daiwa company, designed and engineered by Daiwa in California or something, and made in Japan. Well, we're going to take this reel apart. We'll show you how it's made, how to service it, and how to get it out there fishing again. So before I do anything in terms of servicing a reel, I generally like to test the reel. I'll tighten that handle up. This one's turning. It's got its normal, I need some oil squeaks. Bail trips. I'll just test the drag washers here. And the drag washers are pretty good. So I'm uncertain what Scott paid for this reel, but it looks like he probably did well. These are great saltwater reels. They have fantastic capacities on them, and they can handle heavy line. And you'll see when we take this apart, it's engineered strong enough that it's going to handle the big fish as well. This one would have been designed for surf usage, perhaps some trolling for some big fish offshore. All right, we started by taking off the drag adjuster knob. Now I'm going to remove the spool. We're just going to set those aside for a moment and look underneath. This almost has the look of a trip lever from a Mitchell, where they're going to have an extension down. When it comes across, it's going to hit a stud over here somewhere. Well, it's not seeing it right now, of course, but it will hit a stud, and that stud will trip, and there it is. It's hiding under here. This stud right here is what it's going to hit when it's extended. That'll trip it back. All right, we're going to take this reel apart. We'll show you the insides of it, and while I'm doing that, I'm just going to spray this inside and let that penetrating oil just kind of seep in. There's some greases and that are there. I'm also going to take a moment to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel repair, if you want to learn how fishing reels are made, how to service them, and how to keep them going. That's kind of the idea of Second Chance. Give them a second chance out there to keep fishing, and the channel is dedicated to you learning how to do that. So it's all about teaching you to do it yourself, and I try to do my best to show the complete take apart, servicing, what to look for in problem diagnosis, and how to put the reel back together again as part of the maintenance steps so that you can learn to do that yourself. All right, we removed the handle. The handle was a screw-on handle, and it comes off opposite of the way that you turn the reel when cranking. Looks like there's only 2 screws here, and they're Phillips head screws, so I'm going to take those out next. And as I mentioned, I've seen this this kind of setup before, so I'm kind of not completely in the dark when it comes to servicing this reel. But if you're taking a reel apart that you're not aware of and you haven't seen before and you're a little bit nervous about doing, then I have a couple of suggestions for you. One of them is to take pictures along the way. As you get to critical junctures like this one, we're going to take the cap off here. Take a picture now. Ugh, that's a pretty ugly picture, but take a picture now, and that'll show you where the pieces and parts are before you get started. And then, of course, once you're doing your work, well, we're going to clean up a lot, right? There's a lot of old greases and the like in here that have got to come out and get cleaned. It may not look the same when you go to reinstall. So you can always go back to your picture if you have a question about where did this piece and part come from, what was the orientation of it, what was the order that I took them out in, and that'll help you to save your reel from being a reel in a bag project. All right, the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to pull this pin right in the center here. That's holding the axle shaft to the crosswind block. When I take my pieces and parts out, I put them into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container. It's just a place that I know when I go to reinstall my reel and all the pieces and parts, I know that I only have to look there. I don't have to look far. I've held my finger on that crosswind block and I've removed the axle shaft by pulling up. That one seems in pretty good condition other than the dried grease. I'm going to take some 4-0 steel wool and I'm just going to polish that shaft so that it glides easily. Once I do that, that piece will go into my shaft as well. Notice that you have a washer on here. This is a spool shim washer, and it helps the spool to not bottom out when it's cranked. Make sure if that comes off that you've identified that as the place where it goes. Well, as I mentioned, we have a mess here, and I'm going to lift this up because I want to make sure that I keep the orientation right on this crosswind block, and right now I can't see what that orientation is like because it's all jammed up with the greases. Sometimes these crosswind blocks are not symmetrical. That is, one side has a lower or a higher spot to it than others. This one happens to be symmetrical. And the reason why that's important, if this had a bump out on it and you installed it upside down, well, it might not have the clearance it needs to complete the rotation and move that axle shaft up and down. In this case, it appears that that's centered. But a lot of times you'll find a crosswind block that has a solid part here and it continues down, sort of forming the letter T, and a hole is below. Well, that's what you need to find out when you go to do the work on this one, because if you put it on upside down, it simply won't work. It'll jam at some point in the process. Okay, it looks like we can remove the rotor nut and remove the rest of the rotor here, but I'm not sure, so we're going to try and figure this one out. It may be that this rotor slides down. There's a lot of grease on here. That just kind of impacts the way this is being done. All right, let's grab a deep socket. You need a deep socket because you have a ridge that you can't clear. There we go. With a straightforward wrench. I'm going to try taking this off in a normal counterclockwise manner. It does come off that way. That's going into my parts tray. There's a little kind of keyway thing here. It's a little metal disc that holds the rotor and the pinion gear together. You get that stump there. And now we can move that up. That'll remove the rotor. And now we got to check to figure out just which way. All right, well, this pinion gear pushes down to come out, just like that. And notice that you have a washer that sits on top of that. All right, so much of reel repair and servicing and the like is about cleaning, taking a look at an inspection to make sure that all the pieces and parts are in good stead, and just kind of relubing. All right, well, you heard that the anti-reverse dog is working here, and I do not like to remove a main gear with that anti-reverse dog on. So we're going to try and flip the switch here, and that's unfortunate because the switch is not moving. Well, we're going to have to give that some lube and move it out from there. All right, we should just be able to push this up. I'm just going to take my screwdriver and move that dog out of the way for now. Okay, you just have to keep working this out, and there we go. Eventually it will come out. I don't like to leave that dog engaged the way it is. There's some issues going on here, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our cotton swabs, clean up as much of this grease as I can, and then I'm going to spray that override here so that I can hopefully free that that mechanism up on the bottom. It's not bad to have the thing be stuck in always on position. It's terrible if it's stuck in always off position, because then you don't have an anti-reverse. But as I mentioned, I like to take that off because when it's time to reinstall, you have to play around with the main gear to get it to seat in these little clicks here. That's where it holds the piece into anti-reverse mode. So we're just going to let that sit. We'll come back to that, and hopefully we'll be able to get that thing to move properly. Just going to flood that area now. We're going to put the case off to the side, and we'll go back cleaning some other pieces and parts. All right. We did that before with this. I'm going to do another spray here. Same thing. Grab a cotton swab and clean up all that old dried grease. This is just years of sitting around not being used. And if you don't take care of it now, it may jam a reel later. So go ahead and do that. I just moved it into the set position. That way I can get behind there and get a little bit more of that out of there. And I find that these cotton swabs are very versatile in terms of being able to help you reach places where maybe you can't reach. And I like the idea that they are absorbent and that they will pick up a lot of the dirt and junk that are there. This is a good place for a picture. If for some reason you were intending on taking this piece off, notice how that spring works. That spring has a shoulder on it that's grabbing the back end of this anti-reverse dog. It wraps around the screw, comes out, and there's a tag end resting against the side wall here. So if you're contemplating taking that spring off, and you don't need to, but if you're contemplating taking that spring off, take the picture before you do that, so that if you do get stuck along the way, you have that picture to refer back to. All right, that's in pretty good stead. As I mentioned, this is firing. This is going to come underneath here. There's a stud on the shoulder here. That stud is right here. It's going to hit that stud when it comes around. Okay, so when it's going to come around, it's going to push this bottom here. That's going to give you your bail trip. All right, let's clean up that main gear. This reel does not have any ball bearings in it. That does not make it a bad reel. We kind of see that a lot in the forum. Somewhere along the line, modern reels have conditioned us to think that you need a whole bunch of ball bearings to be a good reel. That's simply not true. But it does speak to the engineering and the quality of design that these old reels went through, and the materials and the pieces and parts that were used in the construction of that reel. All right, I've just taken a wire brush, gently worked them through the gear channels here so that we could clean that up and clean all of the crevices in the gear. You notice I'm pulling it out. As I do that, it's hitting the paper towel here and catching the greases in the lake that's there. We do want to take a moment to clean the back as well. And we want to just use our steel wool here to polish up the shaft of the main gear. Okay, we wanted to work on the anti-reverse dog. We've soaked this with penetrating oil, and I just, off camera, I let it sit, but I grabbed this with the pliers. This is a bet your life kind of scenario. Grabbed it and made sure that it could move. It does, and now that penetrating oil has just done wonders. You can see that dog moving in and out now. So that kind of completes the process of the case. And pretty much time to reinstall now. Now we have the dog off, which is going to enable us to insert that main. So let's go ahead and do that. There was a small shim washer that belongs on the neck of that main gear. Now we're going to take our fishing reel grease. I use Penn Precision reel grease. A little light coat on there. That'll facilitate it. The anti-reverse dog is off so you don't trap yourself in that set. And then just should be able to just work it in. There we go. And what I like to do at this point, I like to put the handle right on there. When you've completed putting the handle on, you'll notice how nice and freely it spins now. We're going to go ahead next. We're going to clean up that pinion gear. Do the same thing we've been doing with the other gear. Make sure it's wiped clean. That includes the washer below. And we're going to clean those teeth. Make sure that they don't have any old greases in there. I'm going to use a small screwdriver to pull out the grease on this one. Again, wipe them on your towel and keep them out of the way. Check those teeth as you're doing it. Make sure that they're not scarred or broken in any regard. You can give it a quick flush with some penetrating oil to just eliminate that. And then if you want, a quick pull with that wire brush will complete the cleaning process there. Look at this metal. Is that crazy metal or what? Beautiful, beautiful work. All right, a little bit of grease onto the pinion gear. And we can insert that up and through, just the way it came out. And I forgot, this washer's got to go in on top, like this, because you can't get it over the ridge of the gear. And then put the gear in. There you go. So again, that's a good place where if you've forgotten and you can't recall how that works, that's a good way to go back to the pictures, see what happened, and go take the appropriate action there. Here's our tie down. Tie down is going to work like this, but you've got to align your stud on the rotor so that you can get the rotor and the clip to intersect. We know when we took this off, it came off in a traditional counterclockwise manner, so it's going to go back on in a clockwise manner. Grab your ratchet to do that. And now we should be able to turn this nice and easy. All right, we're going to put some grease onto the pinion gear. Put some grease onto the main gear. We greased the shaft, the back shaft of this already. Did not take care of the teeth on the main gear, so we'll do that now. And then you want to get grease onto the face of that main gear because your crosswind block is going to ride up and down on that, and you want to eliminate the friction there. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, if you leave them in the comments section, I'll try and answer those questions for you. Again, this is an educational channel. The idea here is to show you how to do it. And if you're stumped, well, we're going to try and help you out that way as well. We have our axle shaft. We've cleaned that, and we used some 4-row steel wool there. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of grease on that. Insert that through the pinion gear, through the shaft, and then line up that hole so that it can accept that pin that we took out early on. That would be this pin. Just like that. Now you'll see that the gear will spin and the post will go up and down, causing the oscillation. And boy, didn't that grease just free that that noise right up, didn't it? All right. And grab our side plate then. Place the side plate in, get the 2 side plate screws, and then everything is done except for the spool, where we got to make sure that those drag washers are surfaced. Scott found this at the flea market, and flea markets are good places to search for used tackle and equipment. Of course, depending on where you are in the country, you'll find different types of tackle and equipment. Here in the Northeast, we find a lot of saltwater stuff because we do a lot of saltwater fishing. I understand if you're in our Midwestern states, you may find a lot more bass equipment or freshwater pond equipment. That's okay. Whatever you find useful, you can usually find at a good price because it's used. And if you take the precautions that we're showing here in terms of how to service the reels, well, then you can keep them fishing and you've got yourself a bargain. All right, to get to these drag washers, there's a clip. You can see it here. I've started to partially remove it. It rides in a slot and it's a retaining clip that holds the drag stack in place. I'm going to pull that off. Then we're going to take the drag washers out. Now this reel's got a lot of max drag in this one because it's got a lot of washers. And max drag is a function of surface area of drag washers. So this one looks like it's got a stack of 6 or 7. And that's going to provide a lot of max drag, which backs up the idea of it being an ocean-going reel where you're going to be fighting heavier fish and you're going to be fighting more aggressive fish. All right, I want to get all of the dirt out of that holder there because the dirt will inhibit the function of drag. So we've got hard washers here. So we're just going to reset these. First one in, and this is where you take a picture too. You want to make sure that you know the sequence of these washers. First one in was a red one. Now I'm noticing that we have a little surface rust on these drag washers here, or the metals. You need to get that rust off of there or we'll tear it up. All right, now we're going to put in the first of the eared washers. They go into the channels on each side. It has a circular part in the middle. And we have a second of the hard washers, and just make sure they're clean. The second one in is called a keyed washer. It doesn't have the points, but it has a rectangular shape to it. Third one in. This is kind of odd because we only have that one eared washer in there. Then we have a tension washer. This one's metal as well. This goes between the two metals. And we have the top one. So we have 3 washers in there. And we have a tension washer. And now we can put the clip back on the cap. Find a groove. Sit one side of the cap clip in there. And kind of just rotate it. And you can usually use hand strength to do this. Sometimes you may need an assist. And just make sure that it's all the way in there. Now, I've gotten questions from time to time. Some folks will say, gee, I got the spool and the clip is missing. Well, it's understandable that it can miss because if you don't pay attention to it, it can shoot off in a hurry. But does that affect the operation of the reel? No. That's only for retention purposes to keep the drag stack there and to keep it in order. Make sure you go down so that you can set your adjuster button on. Let's get this adjuster in place. Yep, we're tight, and then loosen it back up. Make sure that you don't maintain pressure on that when it's not being used. All right, just going to clean this all off. And then we'll give it a final test here, make sure everything's working as it should, and that Scott can give this reel a second chance. Well, we know what it was like when it came in. Boy, it's really kind of cranking nicely now. Let's bring that anti-reverse claw in. This is a beautiful reel. And no ball bearings. Look at how smooth the bail operates. I showed you how that trip lever works. And for storage purposes, this reel has an adjustable handle. If you just kind of crank that in, the handle will fold, and you can store that without worrying too much about the handle breaking. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. It's a classic reel from Japan in the 1970s, early 1980s, my guess. It's a Daiwa Wilcox, but it's a Daiwa reel. This model is a 370 and or 770. Up 770. I trust my glasses better. All right, it's a Daiwa Wilcox 770 saltwater reel. You saw how to take it apart, service it, and put it back together again, and you learned a little bit about the history of a trade reel. I hope you've enjoyed it. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for all it is that you do. And to everybody, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.